Well, these two who could have been Giants are at it again. Bruce Bochy leading the Texas Rangers to a 2-0 ALCS lead, and Bryce Harper leading the Phillies to a Game 1 win in the NLCS. And again, both of them could have been Giants.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following this show to get Locked On Giants Monday through Friday, pretty much all season long. And including in the offseason as we're covering the managerial search. And speaking of managers, Giants had Bruce Bochy. And what's we're going to discuss later, like how do the Giants regain their identity, which they seem to have lost a little bit or a lot bit. But Bruce Bochy, of course, the whole saga goes that there was so much stability in the front office, and Bochy was an extension of that, just of the stability that the Giants had for so long. And then the huge groundbreaking news, Bobby Evans fired towards the end of the 2018 season, and eventually they hire Farhan Zaidi away from the Los Angeles Dodgers, which was just a major shift, as you can see, in terms of how the roster has played out and how the team has kind of gone about playing, and openers and all that kind of stuff, openers and platoons and all that. It's just very, very different than it used to be, and understandably people are frustrated with it because it hasn't been working outside of the 1 year when it worked to perfection in 2021. But so Bochy, quote unquote, retired after the one more year. The first year under Zaidi, Bochy stayed, but then he quote unquote retired. And everything we have read and heard is that he decided to step away. And it wasn't like, I don't want to deal with this analytics nonsense. I think it was more like, what more could he possibly accomplish here? I guess you could keep winning, try to win even more rings. But, I think he just understood that, a totally different style and new president of baseball operations deserved their opportunity to pick their own manager, when Bochy was basically he can't be fired. There's no firing Bruce Bochy from the San Francisco Giants, given all the success, and for good reason. But if you're Farhan Zaidi, you can't be like, you're out of here, Bochy. You just can't. And so that's how it happened. And then Bochy took, 2020 off, 2021 off, and then 2022 off as well. And then 2023 here, he comes and manages the Texas Rangers. And so all of that to say, now here he is managing the Texas Rangers. Just brief segue. Okay, Farhan Zaidi deserved to hire his own manager, and it seems that he whiffed, it's a lot of, there was right away, it was an unpopular hire. And so when you make what was an unpopular hire and he never becomes popular, and then you fire him, that just doesn't look good. And so there's strike one of perhaps multiple strikes against Farhan Zaidi, look, he could have come in and just implored, just said, Bochy, you're the guy, we want you to stay, just please stay. I don't think that was the case. It was more like Farhan Zaidi wanted a Gabe Kapler, and that looks like kind of a dumb move. And, just specifically Kapler, perhaps. No offense to Gabe Kapler, just didn't work out. But Bochy, so here he is, first year in Texas, and the last 2 years, they had been bad. And then year one, Bruce Bochy leads them to the playoffs for the first time in quite a while. I can't remember the last time it was, but and then they haven't lost. They had to play in the wild card round. They didn't win the division on the last day. They had a chance to win the division simply by winning a game, and they lost 1-0. And so they would have had a first round bye had they won that game that they lost 1-0. So very disappointing. But they go into Tampa and they just sweep the Rays in the wild card round, and then they play the. Why am I blanking on who they played? In the Orioles, right? They played the Orioles in the division series, and they swept them. And now they've started the American League Championship Series against the Astros, and they're up 2-0. Starting both of their games were in Houston to start, and so now they've only played one home game, and yet they're undefeated. That would make them 7-0, just ridiculous. And so, as a Giants fan, how are you supposed to feel about this? And I know others have discussed this. I've seen a couple of people have podcasted about this. Frankly, no offense, I just haven't had time. I haven't listened to anybody's podcast, like, Giants Talk and all that with Pavlovich. I haven't listened. I haven't heard, but my opinion is nuanced, because number one, you look out there and you go, the Texas Rangers scored 4 runs in the first inning yesterday. Did Bruce Bochy score them? Does Bruce Bochy's managing get them 4 runs in the first inning? I think a lot of their success is attributable to Donnie Ecker, who helped the Giants in the same way that he's helped the Rangers, in that their offense has become really good. And it's not just the guys you would expect, like Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. It's up and down the lineup. It's like Jonah Heim and Mitch Garver and Leody Taveras and all these other guys. And also, I just want to point out the bullpen, which is often where managers get blamed or credited. If a bullpen is good, you get praise as a manager. If a bullpen struggles, the manager gets blamed. And the Rangers' bullpen was their biggest bugaboo in 2023. It's been better in the playoffs. Obviously, they haven't lost a game, so they're not having bullpen meltdowns, but the bullpen was their biggest issue in 2023. And so, if it's Kapler and the bullpen is a problem, people, the fans anywhere blame the manager. And the Locked On Rangers host, Bryce, forgetting how to pronounce his last name, but he has talked to me privately about kind of being frustrated with the way Bruce Bochy has managed throughout the course of the year at times. And so I think it's easy to just see the success that they're having in the postseason and say it's Bochy, but it's also more nuanced than that. I think that their offense has been great, and the manager doesn't usually have much to do with that. And Donnie Ecker is there. And by the way, the Giants might want to hire him to be their manager. The bullpen hasn't been good, and that is often attributable to the manager. But then the final point I want to make is that Bruce Bochy, he just has success in the playoffs. And so there's something to that too. I'm not denying that there's nothing to that. The teams that he manages in the playoffs, I mean, it started with the Giants, they just win. And that's what Texas is doing right now. And so I don't know what it is, his calming presence, whatever it is, they just win. And that is what they're doing right now. And so how should you feel? Yeah, I mean, a little jealous, embarrassed, sad, disappointed, and whatever. But also, I don't think you should be like, this is 100% Bochy and nobody else. And it's just because of Bochy that they're having this success. I don't see it that way, but he definitely gets some of the slice of the pie of the credit. So anyway, a whole different topic that's totally related. Bryce Harper, another guy who, the Giants almost signed, and he could have been, and now he's shining in the postseason. So how should we feel about this? How should we feel about Harper? We'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you by Oh my goodness, my favorite pair of shorts that I've ever owned, hands down, from the second that I put them on. Bird Dogs, number one, first and foremost, they make me look good. And I don't always look good in a pair of shorts, but these, I've got a girlfriend of 8 years, and so she's honest with me, and she's seen me wear everything that I've ever owned, and as soon as she saw me in my Bird Dogs, she said immediately, "Those are the best looking shorts you've ever worn." And so I was kind of stunned by her instant take like that, especially because they were so comfortable. And what I've learned since is that Bird Dogs are functional for any occasion because they look so good and they're comfortable. Golfing, going out on a date, just an evening out, hanging out by the pool, working out, lounging, going to work. Like, it's appropriate for anything, comfortable for anything. And you get these free items with your purchases, like this Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler. I've also got a Bird Dogs white tech hat that I don't have on me right now, but it's one of my favorite hats. And right now, go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb or enter promo code lockedonmlb at checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonmlb for a free water bottle at checkout. And you won't want to take your Bird Dogs off, we promise you. All right, as promised, we are going to get into Bryce Harper, the other kind of half of this story with Bruce Bochy, as a Giants fan sitting at home with your team not playing and with witnessing two consecutive miserable, I don't want to say miserable, but frustrating, non-inspiring seasons. And here we are watching the postseason and watching Bruce Bochy just steamroll right through teams and watching Bryce Harper do the same. And to think about what could have been. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers tomorrow, likely getting into our mailbag collection. As I have said recently, we've got about a zillion left that I mean to get to and don't get to often enough, frankly. But also any managerial updates. The managerial search is obviously fascinating, and any updates will provide those as well. So, Bryce Harper, a little background, just like I gave you with Bochy. This was a Farhan Zaidi pursuit, and it was his first off season here. Farhan Zaidi pursued Bryce Harper legitimately before he ever saw the Giants play a game under his watch. And the reports of the final offer that the Giants made to Bryce Harper was 12 years, $310 million. The deal that Harper ultimately accepted from the Philadelphia Phillies was 13 years, $330 million. And so not very different. Like, the Giants were close. The thing is, you're not necessarily the agent isn't necessarily coming to you and saying, the Phillies are offering 13 years, $330 million. What do you have to say about that? It's more like, what is your best offer? You're short, or whatever it may be. And it's all tactics, right? You don't want to bid against yourself. You got to be careful that you're not just doing that. But at the end of the day, they came up short. It could just be that the Giants are a team that gets used by agents because at this point it's well established. The Giants want that star player. Like, they pursued Harper, they pursued Ohtani, obviously, but that was pre-Farhan Zaidi. They pursued a trade for Giancarlo Stanton, also pre-Farhan Zaidi. They pursued this last offseason Aaron Judge. They pursued, obviously, Carlos Correa. We have legit reporting that they pursued Trevor Story. So anyway, if you're an agent, you want teams thinking the Giants are involved, and it's easy to convince anybody that the Giants are involved. And so it'll happen again. You're going to hear the Giants rumored and linked to Ohtani and all the top names, and they very well may be interested and in on those guys, and they could actually end up with one of them one day. They almost did with Correa, outside of a freak incident. But regardless, the Giants fell short on Harper so 310 divided by 12 years is just 25.83 million a year, which is very reasonable. Aaron Judge this last offseason got $40 million a year over 9 years. 40 million. So about, what is it? 14 million more per year than Bryce Harper. And Bryce Harper was entering his age 26 season. And so the temptation is to say, okay, that takes him through age 38, but it actually only would have taken him through age 37, I believe is how, because you got to count year 1 as year 26. Anyway, and this last offseason, we kind of saw a change in philosophy where teams were like willing to pay players into their early 40s in order to increase the total amount that they were offering, but keep the average annual value low because that average annual value is how the luxury tax, your luxury tax payroll is calculated. Is when you sum up your players, it's based on average annual value, not like total value or whatever. So my question is, if you take that amount that the Giants were willing to pay per year, 25.8 million, and you just say, okay, if that was taking him through age 37, let's go 38, 39, 40, let's add 3 more years. And instead of 12 years, let's make it 15. You could have gone 15 years, 387.5 million for the same average annual value and take him through his age, what did I say, 40 season? And all of a sudden you're offering about 60 million more than the Phillies. And so there's just this regret, I think, like when you look back and you say you should have offered more. And that was this weird offseason when like Bryce Harper and Manny Machado were unsigned deep into the offseason. It was like at FanFest, which is in February, that there was reports that maybe Harper might become, there was like optimism within the organization that Harper may be choosing the Giants. Just like Judge kind of optimism. Oh my God, it was John Heyman's fault with Arson Judge appears headed to Giants or whatever the heck he said. I think that might be an exact quote. But yeah, should we feel like almost exactly the same way? Yes, except I think in this case, exactly the same way as with Bochy. Yes, except I think in this case, it is more like just clear and obvious that it's one person having that influence. With a manager, it's harder to say. It's not like baseball managers, a lot of their job is like kind of just communication, and like the decisions that they make don't make as big of an impact as in other sports, I believe. I don't know other sports as well as I know baseball, but a lot of the times, I mean, it's just like I said, like bullpen decisions, lineup decisions, I don't think matter as much as people think. Like, oh, this guy's batting third instead of fifth. It just doesn't make that much of a difference. But like I said, the Texas bullpen was bad. The last year Bruce Bochy was with the Giants, actually not the last year, but in 2016 in that playoff run, the Giants bullpen was utterly atrocious and collapsed and cost them that game 4 of the NLDS, which I was in attendance for when they blew a 3-run 9th inning lead, which was not fun to attend, but I digress. So Bryce Harper, though, I mean, he's just a superstar. And what I see when I see Harper is not just the performance on the field, but what I see is that he elevates others and he elevates the organization. He elevates the Phillies, and then he elevates those around him. He makes other star players want to play there. And so you see just this collection of like veteran star players that are like leading the team. And the Giants lack that. They lack that kind of, I mean, when you had Buster Posey, I think you kind of had that, but he's not as intense as a Bryce Harper or whatever. But if you're watching these games, and just keep your eye on Bryce Harper in the dugout, talking to other players, giving them tips and stuff. The Giants need their Bryce Harper. They had their chance. At this point, he's 31, and so, he's still going to be good, but at some point he'll be entering the decline phase of his career. But the last however many years it's been, you could have had this guy, and he's that good of a player that the last 2 seasons he could have been enough to push you over the top and get you into the playoffs. And as we've seen from the Phillies, they haven't had the greatest win totals necessarily, but they have succeeded in the postseason the last couple years. So far, last year they went to the World Series and lost. This year they're up 1-0 in the NLCS. So how do the Giants get their identity back? They can't have Bruce Bochy. They can't have Bryce Harper. They must move forward. We can't just focus on the past and what could have been or whatever. They've got to forge their way forward. And we all want the best for this organization. So how do they do it? What needs to be done to get them back to that level? We will get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you by our favorite betting site ever, America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. October baseball is back and in full swing. Both championship series going on. It's a ton of fun to watch. And you can make your postseason debut with FanDuel, which again is America's #1 sportsbook for a reason. Join FanDuel today and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to create your new account. Then you can get in on the action from the first pitch until the final out. Bet on everything from strikeouts to home runs to who will win the game, who will win a series, who will win the World Series. And if you don't want to wait the whole game or the whole series to get a win, predict what will happen in the next at-bat with quick bets. This is one of my favorite things. Sometimes I just have a feeling, and you can make that instant bet and be locked in on the game, and also make a wager on what you think is going to happen. And it's just a really engaging way to enjoy baseball. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Step up to the plate this postseason with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you need to do is place a $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, here we go. How do the Giants find their own identity? Because we cannot just live in the past. If we live in the past, I think as a fan, I'm telling you, I'm playing psychologist today and just saying, don't dwell on your old relationship. You've got to move on and see other people, and and that's literally that is figuratively, I guess that is a good analogy. I think, let's not pine over Bruce Bochy. We've got to think about who's the next manager who's going to lead the Giants to their glory, hopefully. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers tomorrow, like I said, likely getting into our gazillion mailbag questions, but also hopefully having some managerial search updates. We know Stephen Vogt is interviewing this year. Are we going to hear about any other outside candidates? Did I say this year? This week. Excuse me. The Giants want to be done with this in less than 3 weeks. They want to have a new manager. So come back every day for the latest. Any whispers of anything, and you'll hear it here first. So, anyway, as I said it out loud, I just knew there was some segment of those listening when I say, how do the Giants get back to their glory or whatever I said? And I think a lot of people's probably first thought, just to give you a voice here, if you have this opinion, is you may be thinking they have to get rid of Farhan Zaidi. And in my opinion, they don't have to. But I also, in my opinion, the way that they've played the last several years, it doesn't work for me anymore. That's the thing, is when Zaidi was hired and like what also didn't work for me was the way they were doing things towards the end of the Bobby Evans era. But I think they took it like to the other extreme, and it's one thing if you take it to the other extreme and you have tons of success, and it's kind of hard to argue. You could be like, I don't really like the way they play, but they win. But if you do things the way that they've done things, which is like unorthodox and a lot of people don't like it, and you lose, then what are we doing, right? So I don't think philosophically, like, Farhan Zaidi is incapable of building a team that can't be really, really fun and that is a perennial contender. And a lot of it probably is going to be homegrown players. You know, they need some of their own homegrown players like Kyle Harrison, Marco Luciano, Luis Matos, Patrick Bailey. Like, and we saw a lot of these guys show potential. Like, this very well could be a wave of young talent that helps the Giants get there. But the first things first is the managerial choice. They need to get it right, and they got it wrong last time. All due respect to Gabe Kapler. I mean, he put so much into this job. He was dedicated, loyal, passionate. You may not like the guy, you may not like the way he managed, but I don't think you can deny that he tirelessly worked to the best of his ability to try to lead the Giants to success. And so I respect the heck out of him for that, and I appreciate him for that. But I just think ultimately, like, you need someone who people can rally around, the fans can support, and the players want to play for. And I think that in that way, and also just kind of, like I said, taking it a little too far to the extreme analytical side of things, I still believe in those things, but I just think that you've got to strike a balance where, because we had, players moaning and groaning or grumblings or whatever of unhappiness with the way things were being done. And so I think that you need to kind of alter that to some degree, like rein it in a little bit, but don't go all the way back to prehistoric ages and, baseball from 1908 when, whatever, that you only threw fastballs and that breaking pitches were considered taboo or like unmanly or something. Like, that's literally a thing that of the past, like that it was for weak men through trickery pitches, stuff like that. So let's not go backwards, but at the same time, let's have a team that the Giants can rally around. And it starts with getting the managerial hire correct, and then it continues with having a much better offseason when you bring in some talent that gets people excited. So if you get the managerial hire down and you bring in some real talent, whether it's via free agency or via trade, I think that's how you get back on track. And then you need your young players, your own players, to continue to develop. And perhaps then we could see, a glory age. I think, and last thing I'll say about all this, if you start firing people willy-nilly like Farhan Zaidi, you don't want instability in your organization. You don't want to be one of those teams that is known as just cycling through managers, cycling through front offices. Like, it takes a long time for a new front office to like transition and become like, make it their own. And so I think like Zaidi is a bright person. He is a likable person. I know some don't get that, but he has natural people skills, which is nice out of a person. Like, you don't always get that in someone in his position. So you need a manager who's also got really good people skills and also can rein in the extreme analytical stuff just a little bit to an extent that makes people not so unhappy. You want your fans are the fans. They're the people who are paying to watch this product. You need the product to be something that the fans like. And I think the last couple years it has not been a product that the fans like. And they need to fix that, and I think they know it. And so I'm looking forward to what they do, and hopefully they don't screw it up. And if they screw it up, it'll be a comedy of errors, and we'll call them out on it, and then drastic measures will be taken. But hopefully it doesn't come to that where your team is like a mess and a comedy of errors. But it could happen. But let's hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't. I want success for them immediately. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, mailbag, latest on the managerial search. Hopefully some updates there. Always fun when we get those. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.